Hey everyone, this is Jake. So today we're going to be talking about liberty and freedom. Now, today we use these words interchangeably. You can use either one, and you know you're talking about the same thing. But the thing is, this wasn't always the case. So I'm going to talk about some thinkers who really differentiate between these two ideas. And the first guy I'm going to talk about is Thomas Hobbes. Now, Thomas Hobbes is this guy who was a judge, so he's seen a lot of bad things, and he also comes from this kind of old school mindset, which is more medieval rather than our more of our Renaissance and our really modern thinkers in his concept of good and evil. He is one of these kind of medieval guys in the sense that he believes that mankind is evil because of the original sin, which we talked about in the first video. Now, with that, he is going to argue that since man is evil, the man must be controlled. And the way to do this is through this idea he talks about in his famous book called Leviathan. And in it, he's going to say that the people make up the body politic, the nobles are the hands and the feet, and they direct the body where to go. But at the end of the day, you need a king, an enlightened despot, who is going to tell the body where to go because they cannot be trusted to do the right things on their own. And he's really going to get into this aspect. And he will talk about this problem with absolute freedom. And what that means is this. If you're thinking about freedom, you're like, well, what's the problem with too much freedom? Well, according to Hobbes, and it makes sense. I mean, essentially, it's like when I have students who like the movie The Purge, and essentially what happens is you can do whatever you want, which sounds great in theory, except for one major problem. If you can do whatever you want, so can someone else. And in this case, if you have the ability to rob, rape, pillage, loot someone else, they have the ability to rob, rape, pillage, and loot you. And this means that you actually have no freedom because everyone has absolute freedom. And so he makes a distinction. You need to have something to these sets of laws to govern man, and you need to have a ruler who is going to tell you the right things to do. So basically, the way you stop evil from happening is if they do something wrong, you punish them, right? And he talks about this idea of if there was anarchy, then you would have this absolute freedom, then the lives of man would be nasty, poor, brutish, and short. And he talks about there's going to be no art, no letters, and no buildings, whatnot. And the reason is because basically everybody getting RRPL, robbery, pillage, and looted, and therefore they wouldn't be able to aspire to these intellectual ideas. Now, there's another guy named John Locke who is going to take him a step further. He's going to disagree in a certain sense with Hobbes because he's going to argue that mankind has a capacity for both good and evil. And he's going to be more influenced by these modern day ideas, or modern in his day, which would be that man is capable of self-rule, that you need something, the social contract, and you agree to give up certain pieces of your freedom in order to give you the utmost liberty. And you give up a little bit of freedom, you give up your right to murder. If you do, they will throw you in jail. And in turn, because you have given this up, then you can be assured of your safety as well because the people that are living next to you have given up that right as well. And yes, there is crime and whatnot. However, most people don't do crime. Now, Hobbes would argue it's because of the fact that, they're afraid of punishment. Locke would say, sometimes it might be, but other times just because people are good. And we've also got Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who's going to argue that man is inherently good, and he's going to talk about how that people can be trusted and people are inherently good. And he actually talks about this whole other society where everybody's going to be living together in peace and harmony. And the last fellow I want to mention is Baron Montesquieu. And Baron Montesquieu is extremely important, especially to us in the West, because he comes up with separation of powers. And the reason he does this is because he wants to give the most liberty to as many people. You can be the most free when you're protected by your government from other people. But just as importantly, you are protected from your government as well. And that creates the most liberty for people.